Good afternoon. Is the sound all right in the back? I'm very honored to introduce to you this afternoon Brenda Marie Obsey. Obsey is the author of 4 books of poetry, including her most recent, All Saints, New and Selected Poems, winner of the 1998 American Book Award. Her poems have appeared in numerous journals and anthologies, including Callaloo, The Southern Review, American Women's Poetry Now, The Main Thing, an anthology of contemporary Southern poetry, American Voice, and American Poetry Review. Recipient of a New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Foundation Maxi Grant and a National Endowment for the Arts Creative Writing Fellowship. She has been a fellow of the MacDowell Colony, the Fine Arts Work Center in Provincetown, the Kentucky Foundation for Women, the Virginia Center for the Creative Arts, the Malay Colony, and the Bunting Institute of Radcliffe College and Harvard University. Obsey's poetry is grounded in place in her native city, New Orleans, as well as in memory. Her book, All Saints particularly, is a lyrical and elegiac evocation of unsung histories. Like the woman in her poem, Desire and Private Griefs, Obsey is the kind of woman you call on to stand for your dead. In this book, the poet takes on the role of Damballa, the deity who mediates between the worlds of the living and of the dead, who must be mourned and sung over, and prayers told them to carry to the other side. Saving and setting aside so much that could have been lost, Obsey gives us stories of private and communal grief, such as the sweatshop women who must keep working despite needles sewn through flesh, and the quick, violent abortions that allow them to stagger back to their machines. This poem speaker, the granddaughter of one of these women, herself is the last remaining evidence, the smooth, straight seam of these lives unstitched by Solomon's sons as they sewed suits to dress white mannequins, cursing the cloth they stitched together and the lives it cost them to stitch it. Survival for individual and community depends on memory, on keeping history alive so that then and now form one straight seam. Memory is everything, the poet tells us. The ancestors do not die, and the faithful do not forget. In All Saints' invocation, Obsey calls on the slave ancestors who lie inside the brick of which our homes, our streets, our churches are made. And throughout her work, Obsey's New Orleans is a city whose very architecture is memory. I have never avoided the tomb cities I was taught to tarry in, the poet says. And by embracing this history, this courageous and deeply empathetic poet leads her community, her readers, through the strewn ashes in the dark to some sainted spirit ground to believe on. Please welcome Brenda Marie Obsey.
I'm going to begin, as I usually do, with something for the dead. When my grandmother Alberta was a young woman, she was employed in a sewing factory called Solomon's. And I used to pass that building almost every day when I took the streetcar to go from downtown New Orleans to any place I needed to get to in uptown New Orleans. My grandmother had led a very protected life. She She never was employed except for this one job which she held during the Depression, when my grandfather, who was an opera singer and a linguist, among other things, was unemployed. Alberta, Factory Poem, Variation 2. When my grandmother Alberta was a girl, she worked in Solomon's factory alongside women who stood to stitch men's suits, to hang from the shoulders of white mannequins who would not say thank you for the any number of needles sewn through flesh, to put food on the table, to keep children in school or a husband home, to avoid the indignity of government relief, to protect a father or a mother from the old folks' home. My grandmother Alberta was a girl when she first saw women eating small sandwiches or bread dry long sewn from the hip pockets of their dresses as they stood sewing because they were given no time for lunch. Women bleeding through triple-layered toweling, afraid to leave their machines the length of time it took to wash and change the wadded cloth between their legs. Afraid to lose the pay Solomon's sons doled out at week's end, and more than once, a woman who had to go, but not soon enough. A woman sprawled against the white commode, the dark fluid slipping across the floor, and the 2 or 3 other women standing guard against the door, hiding away the solution, quinine and castor oil, to bring on the quick, violent abortion that might let you stagger back to a machine, to stand and stitch together collars and lapels, welt pockets to decorate white mannequins, propped up in better stores throughout the southern region. She was a woman with a husband and children by the time she knelt between her own baby sister's knees and caught the nearly full-term moving mass, felt its warm head in her hand before she flushed it down the toilet and wiped it between Galina's legs. All kinds of things I saw and did, she said, working in a factory of women. And it was no time before she was promoted to floor walker, freed from the stooping posture of those women who stitched heads down in silence, or singing out across to one another lyrics spun out above the hum of motors and needles. Often it was the thread cutters whose bottoms bore into the long wooden benches where they squatted gap-kneed more than sat, who tossed out a line, and it would come back stretched by the heavier voice of some woman who stood all day, wiping the oil from her fingers into the blackened wood of her upright Atlas machine. Such a woman sent back a line stretched to endurance, altogether seamless against the drone of motors working at full pitch. My grandmother Alberta walked the boarded spaces between the women. She walked. She kept time. Is it any wonder, she asks, as if I were to answer, is it any wonder we sang like that? 2. A great deal happened the year I was 9, so I suppose I must have been 9 the year my mother, not my grandmother, taught me to embroider. I sat cross-legged on the hardwood floor, bunching up the coarse cloth that would become dishcloths, tea cozies for my grandmother, who surely had enough of one and small use for the other. Later, much later, I learned to fashion elaborately flowered pillow slips, dresser scarves, lace edging she loved to store up, to show off to relatives foolish enough to visit during the long New Orleans summers. Your mother does a fine stitch, she says, watching me lift, then reset the heavy iron over the face-down designs as I was taught. When I do not look up from my task, she offers at a lower register, sewing is different. No one teaches you to sew. 3. The men who worked the mezzanine, the cutting floor above, looked out across the vast, crowded floor of women, rolled up white shirt sleeves, took white chalk in hand, marking and cutting, men's labor, calling for a certain daring precision and high paying, affording short breaks to smoke or eat or drink RC Cola on the stair landing, to take time to look across the crowded floor of women on the ground level manufacturing roofs. 4. We stood together. We worked together. We cussed old man Solomon in the day he ever set foot inside this city. We cursed the cloth we stitched together and the lives it cost us to stitch it. We cursed the babies we dropped and the men who gave them to us. The bodies, our own bodies that held to them in the womb, the conditions that dogged us so and made us drop them, by choice or by accident, by long standing in heat or cold, the perfect solution handed over to us by the women we stood among, manufacturing blues for all we were worth. These are the last words. The words my grandmother Alberta did not say to me. My grandmother Alberta is dead. She cannot speak to me further of her youth among those women, her and her baby sister, down on the ground level among their upright Atlas machines. She can no longer hold up at eye level her slightly yellowed middle finger, sewn through the nail, the smooth, even split. And after all those years, the smooth, even split where the machine tore flesh and nail, and after all those years, the nail refused ever to grow together again. My grandmother Alberta is dead and buried and reduced to ash. I am her last remaining evidence, a smooth, straight seam. New Orleans is an old city, and one of the things that it's famous for is its unique approach to slavery. One of the things that I always found interesting about New Orleans and slavery was that there were no lynchings in New Orleans during the slave period, during the colonial period. Those of us who were caught escaping or trying to escape or fomenting rebellion were simply decapitated by our French and Spanish overlords. We were decapitated and our heads jammed atop 20-foot poles, and these 20-foot poles would be staked out along the intended route of the escape or rebellion. In the 17 teens, New Orleans had the largest population of free black people. In the 1720s, in the census, there's a man who is listed as the keeper of the high or bayou road. He is a free African man. He is not a Creole. He is not a free man of color. He is a free African man, and his name is Luis Congo. I thought it sounded like a pretty hip job. Keeper of the high or bayou road. It sounded to me like somebody taking a toll to people needing to cross the bridge there. Actually, who he was a man who had set himself up as the colonial powers, the colonial administration's executioner and torturer of slaves attempting to escape the city of New Orleans by means of the high or bayou road. His name was Luis Congo. Now, legend has it that he died mysteriously at the hands of slaves. But because I troubled over Luis Congo, I wondered why he did what he did, of course. He was a wealthy, free African man. He had a plantation, he had a wife, he had children. He was an independently wealthy, free black man, it seemed. And so I had a real problem with Luis Congo. I did a lot of research on Luis Congo and his times, and on the religion that everyone else knows as voodoo in New Orleans, and which we know as the religion. And our voodoo in New Orleans is completely unlike voodoo in Haiti. It has very little to do with the saints. It has primarily to do with the ancestors and with individual powers. And it comes to us directly from our Congo ancestors. And so I posited a number of things about Congo religion. I posited that instead of him merely dying mysteriously at the hands of slaves, I would have him decapitated, and I would have his dead head speak to us across time and across generations about the nature and the hugeness of his betrayal. There are a couple of words. Pemba is the Congo land of the dead. It's where we return to when we die. And it's represented by crossing over a large body of water, which is the river Zadi, which is where the name Zaire comes from. It's a French mispronunciation of the word Zadi, which becomes Zaire. The head of Luis Congo speaks. The poem is written in short titled cantos. When you hear me get to the one that says, The head of Luis Congo begs a favor. You know that's the last one. And there's also a list of words at the beginning. These are the names of specific groups of Africans brought into New Orleans as captives. The head of Luis Congo speaks. Congo Tiamka Kolonga Matinga Bambara Nego Senegal Creole. I am the head of Luis Congo and I speak for him. Lying burnt and rotting in some farmer's field, and you may chant and shout and dance about your bonfires on the levees and drink your aguardiente till you burst. Drink up until your eyes shine liquid, and you will never have the vision that he had. Will never see the world as he saw. What are you in the end but a wretched lot of slaves, the lot of you, slaves in an alien land under the rule of a pale, slight, and ghostly and alien man. You laugh, you drink, and for a moment your pain is gone. But I am here to tell you it is not over. 1,000 betrayals hound you among even those of you dancing on this very water. It is not over. He is only dead. He is not yet through with you. The head of Luis Congo cries out for water. Agua, agua, agua. If there is among you any Congo man, any man with but a grain of pity in his soul, give me a drink of water as I die. But look, look, they cry out in their festive voices. The head of Luis Congo, it speaks, it begs a drop of water. The head of the great murderer, our torturer, the head of Luis Congo cries out for water. The head of Luis Congo weeps. Olorum, bonje, mystère. Here am I at the crossroads of death and life. I look out across a standing water to the land of the dead, Pemba, where I cannot enter whole and weep. O Banza Congo, where are you now? I look and look, but I do not see. O Banza Congo, I search, but I cannot find out the streets of my ancestors or any relative to receive me. O holy mountain, high ground of my striving, source of every drop of blood on my severed hands, what is to become of me, wasting in some petty farmer's field, severed, rotting, burnt almost to ash? O sacred mountain, is this the doing of my two hands? And where are they now? Olorum, bonje, mystère, how am I fallen now that my head is mounted on high? The head of Luis Congo calls for his medicine. Oh great God, good God, where is my healing powder? The balm to soothe, to cleanse, anoint, and calm my head, my heart, my two strong severed hands, crushed beyond recognition and burnt to solid ash. Bonji, Olorum, do not let the dogs, the crow, the beasts of the field, do not let them feed upon me. Mystère, mystère, where now is my little pouch, my paquet médecin, my healing bag? Where now are my manganga de mystère, who cleaned my head and heart and hands and told such great things for my life? Where is my little bag, my faith, my medicine from this evil day? The head of Luis Congo confesses his sin. Silence, all of you, silence. I tell you I am the head of Luis Congo and I speak for him. Enough, enough, enough. Banza Congo rises in the distance now. She rises, but I cannot see her heights. She rises, but my ashen feet cannot find her golden paths. She rises and I stand on high, blinded to the glory I have set before my ways. Enough, then, it is true. I have killed, I have captured, I have tortured. And when I could not kill or capture, I maimed as best I could. At my hands, at my very words, men, women, children, the aged and those with child fell down in heaps along the waters of the bayou. Many a soul, from many a nation, did I send on the watery Pemba way. My pockets, my house, even my bed were lined with gold. White gold, yellow gold, the gold of earth's roses, and with every golden death among you, my house of gold rose higher and higher, nearer and nearer the land of the ancestors, and I became every day closer to their way, And you, Congo men and mongrel nations alike, all of you lived with the very intimate fear of my good killing hand. It is all of it most certainly true. The head of Luis Congo has his little saying. Congo, Tianka, Matinga, Kolongo, Bambara, Senegal, Negro, Creole, and more. It is a good thing to live in fear of a mighty man. It is a good thing to cross the water of death, being sacrificed on the altars of the king. I came as you came, a minor man, crossing not one, but 2 deathly waters, and with every one of your heads, the gold in the seams of my pants, the gold in the posts of my house, the gold in the 4 corners of my field, the gold between the junks of my mulatta, the gold in the waters beside my great house grew and paved the road ever higher to my greatness. And what if I made myself a king? This is a strange land, a nether man's land, and it is a good thing to be hated and feared, is it not, in a strange man's land? It is true, it is true, it is true. I captured and I killed and I did not look back. And now I am captured and killed and cannot see farther. But I did not take from you your healing medicines. I did not take from you your healing qualities. I sent you, every one of you, whole to the ancestors, and now you stand behind the walls of blessed Banza Congo, laughing in your teeth, cursing the demise of a mighty man who helped you from your lowly life bondage along that great Pemba way. A curse for the peace you have in that great city, and I languish. The head of Luis Congo begs a favor. I am the head of Luis Congo, and I have one small request from him. If you cannot bend to give me back my medicine bag, then burn it with my ashes. If you cannot lift up my eyes from where they droop along my cheeks, if you cannot lift them so that I can see the great God, so that I can see the great city I will never enter whole, I tell you, I am the severed head of Luis Congo. I speak for him. In the name of the fear and hatred you once knew of me, give me, please, I beg of you, a bit of your cool, fair water. The city of New Orleans, the old city rather, is divided into faubourgs. Faubourgs are suburbs. Faubourg is merely the French word for suburb. The faubourgs are both down and uptown. The Faubourg Treme is the one that was founded by free people of color. It's the neighborhood that my grandfather comes from and where my mother was reared and where I now live. Faubourg. The Faubourg is a city within the larger city, and the women walk in pairs and clusters, moving along the slave-brick streets, wearing print dresses, carrying parcels on their hips or heads. Within the small city of the Faubourg, there is always work to be done. Rooms and yards and laundry to see to, and always some trouble to be put to rest. Burdens to be shifted from an arm to a hip, from a hip to the head. There are children to be scolded and sung to. There are wares to call out, to sell or buy or search for at market. And along the narrow banquets leading there, a cook, a seamstress, a day's work woman to find or be found. There are chickens to feel and buy and get their necks wrung. Palm oil to buy and sell, palm wine, hot sweet potato pies, and there are blues to be sung or heard above the trees and rooftops all hours of the day and night. The dead must be mourned and sung over, and prayers told them to carry to the other side. The dead must be chanted and marched to their tombs, the tombs then tended and the dogs kept away. Yana leaves must be dried and woven into belts and baskets. Rags must be burned in sulfur to ward off mosquitoes, and slave brick crushed and scrubbed across doorways. There is love to be made, conjure to be worked, and quiet as it is kept, most anything can be done in the Faubourg. In such a city, what name is good for a woman? In such a city, what good is any woman's name? Around the turn of the century, there was a group of 7 holy women. They were called the 7 Sisters of New Orleans. That's all I'll say. Intro. This is Fulberg's study number 3, the 7 Sisters of New Orleans. Intro. Take me to the edge of town. There ain't nothing left for me here. I said, walk me to the edge of town, baby. Ain't nothing for me here no more. As per the quintessential blues mama. 1. I do recall the day the last of them came into the city. Pack of rundown whores is what I took the lot of them for. Walking as if to come unhinged any minute, and talking in that high note, that back parish way. Was Bertie had to tell me how he'd seen them out far back at Spanish Fort, give them all 2-3 silver coins. Seemed they all were hungry, and most likely come down into the city to pass. Well, Angelina liked to die as soon as she laid eyes on him. Pass for what? She screamed at Bertie. Pass for what? Just trash, passing for trash on account of a little yellow hair and tail? Got a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out, and wanting to come downtown trying to be something they pa neither their ma never was? Of course, me. It was all the same to me, long as they didn't dot this doorstep. And you might know that was just what they did. Had already got a dime or 2 of Bertie's and then come here to me for rooms. But that wasn't until after Senorita put the lot of them out. You should have heard all the commotion once they took up there. Living all on top of one another, which at Senorita's is the way everyone lives. I tell you, it was a mighty commotion when Senorita opened her mouth for all reported here, saying all how she couldn't have such carryings on, disturbance and strife in the house where she lived and worked and ate her daily bread. All how she just couldn't tolerate such back parish ways. Her place was respectable, she said. No kind of cat house, a respectable place. A house of assignation on a good part of the red part. We later learned, those of us who cared to know, that the one called baby sister had read Senorita. And of course Senorita couldn't take it and sent them out. And where did they come to if not here, right here? And didn't even ask for Bertie, though he was the one helped them before. No, ma'am. The one called Valelia comes straight up to the front porch, pushed the screen door too. I'm looking for Mr. Bertie's woman, she called into the front room. Tell her I'm Valelia, one of the 7 sisters, and I'm standing in need of a good, clean woman. They were blood sisters, every one of them. Grew up out in St. John's. The night the mother died of a tumor she would not have treated, baby sister, whose given name was Eulalie, took a fit. She made it out as far as Spanish Fort. They come upon her bleeding from the feet from walking so far without shoot first. When they saw they could not force her to return to St. John's, they stayed with her there, and she convinced them to fast. When the 5 days had come and gone, she told them not to worry. Their palms would be crossed with silver that same day. A wagon would arrive to carry them into New Orleans, and they would have food and rooms, and not long after, Bertie Barthélemy pulled into view. No, they didn't come to pass or whore around. They come to make a living out of visions and such. On the basis of Eulalie's faith, they come into the city as holy women. 3. I swear they looked to me like any sisters might. I offered them to come on in, but only Valelia did. The others stayed out on the front porch steps, some standing, some sitting, all pressed close around baby sister. And when I saw up close how she was right dark, and one to the others as well, I turned my heel on all I'd thought about them, on all Angelina had been saying, day in, day out. Those girls couldn't pass for Mexican, much less white. And anyone with eyes to see would tell you there wasn't a fast one among them. I give him the room Bertie's boy Walker had died in. I charged him $1.25 a week, and Angelina never uttered a hard word against it. It must have been autumn or very well near it. I remember the rains had started to come into the city, so it must have been early autumn when the first one showed up from Bay St. Louis, asking after a reading with the 7 Sisters of New Orleans. 4. They lived on St. Philip, over there by that Barthélemy boy and his woman Leanna. Never bothered anybody, but then they never had to. People come from all over. Bay St. Louis, all the way from Memphis to hear them tell their dreams and signs. Had one called Medea. She wasn't the mother of them, though. It had already been told how the mother's dying was what sent them here in the city in the first place. She wasn't even the oldest. She was the second, maybe even the third. But they all called her that. And the one who dreamed, well, they called her baby sister. 5. I have heard tell of them, yes, but I never believed the sister part. People say they wasn't even from here, come from way off somewhere, foreigners or nations. Island people most likely, reading and healing and getting their spirit. Old-time hoodoo is what it sounded like to me, and I never did go in for all that. Roots and shammy bags and carryings on. And how come it's always got to be some Negro woman got to heal everybody? What kind of colored woman did you ever meet, had time or inclination to sit on a chair all day dreaming and healing? Me, I had to work too hard. And when I'm done over to the factory of an evening, the days I had children to raise, had a man to feed, had me a plot of ground I used to work out there in the back. Yes, ma'am. Misbelieved, collards, bananas, date palm, melon here and there, tomatoes, sweet bell pepper, even had a few camellia bushes out front the steps. Saturdays I baked all day, and Sunday was mass and visiting the ailing and the dying, and supper for minors people come noon. Monday come another week, all over again, and full up with white folk besides. No, ma'am. I never had time for no hoodoo. And 7 in one family, and sisters too. 7 women all sitting on chairs, healing people from Detroit and the West Coast. 6. Going down into the city, baby, leaving it all far, far behind me. I'm going down into the big city, baby, gonna leave all y'all behind. Getting out before this misery make me up and lose my mind. I said I'm gone. 7. Hail Mary, full of grace, Ezuli, mother of women. Blessed art thou, there is truth to be made here. Blessed art thou, dreams, mother, to be dreamt. Blessed art thou, visions to be told. Blessed mother, oh, lead me to the pathway. Blessed mother, over the barred footing. Holy, holy, Ezuli, Ezuli, mother, mother, mother of women. 8. Lisette, Aurélie, Marie-Claude, named her father, Anne Louise, the blackest among us, Belalia, who speaks for baby sister, and my name is Albertine, whom the sisters call Medea, and Eulalie, baby sister, also dark, who tells dreams and signs, gives out sayings and readings, but only when she must, and only for the mother. 9. You might not be from here, but one time, some of your people had to be from the city. That's how we call New Orleans, you know, the city. Only city hereabouts. Some people think it's the only city worth knowing. How would we know, though? We never go too far away. No need to. Sooner or later, everyone comes to the city. It's an old saying. Yes, daughter, your people would have been from just over in Tremay, else you never would have got so far packing that camera and your satchel of questions. People around these parts don't tell much. Never did. But you've got that look. And that's the only reason they sent you here to me. Oh, yes. People fill you full of good food around our way, talk to you till you drop, keep you all kinds of company. But no one sends you to Mother Josephina because of any of that. And no one tells a thing that is not for you to know. So never mind about your questions, and just let me see what all I might tell you. I might tell you things you don't need or even want to hear. I might tell you about your people over this way, like I might tell you your condition. But daughter, let Mother Josephina tell you this one thing. As long as you are here in the city, and whatever else you do, just don't you dream that journey. 10. Kind words, a place to stay, good company among neighbors who watch and report and seemingly never intrude, and more food than anyone living can eat. Their hospitality is a way of teaching strangers to know their place, a way of protecting the history from falling into the wrong hands. But you cannot go without learning much when you are not the stranger you have so counted on being. When you are really returning home, you see too much, you feel too much, and you are always compelled to ask after even more. The next thing, of course, is you begin to dream. That much I knew almost from the start. 11. There is much I could tell you, daughter, but none of it would satisfy your need to know. I could tell you how they died one after the other the way ordinary people do. I could tell you they passed into some vision of baby sisters. I could tell of the long train of men and women, black, white, foreigners from I don't know where, who beat their paths to this door one after the other, looking for the sign to fix their souls or put their lives at peace, to heal their bodies or return some lost prize. I could tell you how they changed my life, the things I saw or hoped, thought, or dreamt I saw, the days I kept their company, scrubbing the floor where baby sisters stood and walked, as she gave out what few words she ever spoke aloud. And I was glad to be of use, a child sent here by my father, because my mother died after birthing me with a veil across my eyes. He didn't have much learning, God rest his poor country soul, but he'd given me everything else, schooling, good clothes, what love he had left for Mama's sake. So then he gave me the possibility of the nearness to the journey. Oh yes, there is so much you might learn from me, all how I came to live in this house, the house of the seven sisters, though this is not it, this is not all of it. The old house burned almost down. I saved what I could. An altar setting caught fire, burnt away a good part of the chapel. I saved some things. That's how I come to be as you see me now, saving and setting aside so much that could have been lost. And what you see here is nothing. As I said, I was a girl, no more than a servant, and glad to be that. Glad to be of use. Oh, the many ways I was of use and to baby sister. So much that the others never trusted me. Only Medea had a kind word for me. Baby sister wants you now, she said to me. And I stopped all or whatever I was doing and went into that chapel. She was a girl, you understand, like me. She was just a girl without a mother, just a little older than I was then. You think they'd have understood, being her sisters, and all so much older, but no, only Medea knew or cared to know. It's time. Her voice like shallow water. Baby sister wants you now. That was how it was. It was me she wanted to touch. She believed I could feel what she felt, you see. I was just a motherless child my own self. Only way I knew to be. Only life I knew was me and Papa and Saturday Mass before her. And you know, daughter, it's true what they say. A woman child without her mother journeys a far piece of road. The old folks say it, and I tell you it is true. So it was me and baby sister, me and Eulalie. I used to sing to her, songs she taught me from her mother, which I never did know. Yes, I sang to her so that we could be girls together, and more than girls. And she used to read me my dreams. Dream for me, she used to plead when I would go. Dream for me tonight, Josephina. What could I do? Could I lie to her when we were girls like that together? Or else pretend some other dream? No. She wept like her heart was breaking that one day, daughter. She wept so hard I wept along with her. She walked the floor weeping and me holding her up and weeping my own self. Because we both knew I had dreamt that dream, you see. Look. Oh, mother, I am on the pathway. Oh, mother, I am on the road. Oh, mother, I am on the pathway. Oh, mother, I am on that road. Shallow water, low mama. Shallow water, low mama, as you lead. Mother, mother, where I find my mother along the shallow, shallow water. The rains are coming into the city in no more than a week. It never did take much of a rain to flood these narrow streets. But can you say it? Can you look at me, daughter, and say you have not dreamt that journey? Of course you can't. Come over closer, baby. Come where mother can touch you. 12. Oh, it come up a mighty rain, and it blowed my house away. I said it come up a mighty rain, just blowed all my house away. Couldn't find no place to please me, so now I ride this lonesome train. It has been 3 years, and I have put away my satchel and my camera. What notions I had for some authentic study of their lives. The only family I have in the city is Uncle Walker's granddaughter, Ava Lee. She sings at a new club on the Rampart, anybody's place. I will not seal or rent or close off any of this house, and I do not lock doors. I live among the sacred objects of their lives. Lisette, Aurélie, Marie-Claude named for their father, Valeria, who spoke for baby sister and bore her grudges, Anne Louise, the blackest among them, Albertine, whom the sisters called Medea, who organized their days, who sought out Josephina from her father's house while she was still a child, and baby sister, Eulalie, who on the basis of one solitary journey made a living for them all out of dreams and signs, and died of clearly natural causes at 14 or 15 or 16 years old. I live here. I see few people, except for the handful of elderly neighbors who still come to tell me their remembrance. I listen to them all, recalling in single portions Josephina, the things she told me, and her way of telling. Her early warning, still too late for me. That song she broke into of pathways and crossings. Ava Lee, who consigns us all to the blues, impromptu and unrecorded. But I keep my own counsel, and I touch nothing, no one. I want to walk a little farther along the shallow water. I want to live a little longer with my dangerous dream. You've been a really good audience, and so now it's time for sex. I have two companion poems that are short that I'd like to read. There's an old song from the 1920s, I believe, Thelma. Oh, Thelma, Thelma, with the jumping jack, the lyrics say. They say that Thelma was so loose, she couldn't even hold on to herself. Spent life so fast, would have to go back to old loves to sound out her own name. And how could we know what went on in that house down on Gonzaga Street? We saw her every day. She'd make the young ones work, and the old ones work hard. And we could see them all dancing and calling Jesus, Jesus in the broad daylight. And now, not one of them can tell you what it was she did to them or made them do. One of them told how Thelma came unstopped one day, and nothing could hold her after that. And after that, she never held on to nothing. It finally caught up with Thelma, he said. I saw her heading out the front door, naked as she come into the world. And before I could say a word, Thelma was out in the middle of the neutral ground, dancing and screaming, eating the black dirt, calling freedom, freedom. Let her home. Darling Henry, this is my last letter home. Did you get Louise to take care of the children? I do not miss them. I miss my house, and I miss my backyard. People are crazy here. I'm lucky Father Durrell was on my side, and I ought to tell you, Henry, I lied to get his help. Told him I had lost my faith, but then I had this vision of glory. Now he comes every day to see how the newfound soul is faring. He will come Wednesday when I am released. Father Durrell says if I had prayed first, I never would be here now. But then, if darling Henry had not driven me till I saw fit to run stark naked out into the neutral ground screaming freedom, I would not be here now. Father Durrell says I must pray and confess my faith daily. And I do pray now, Henry. I pray to God you are not in my house when I get loose from your Wednesday, because I have most absolute faith that while I might not can be free of you, Lord knows I can kill you, and I can see to it you stay dead on a daily basis. Your loving woman, Thelma V. Pekin. New Orleans has a number of what I suppose people think of as oddball religions. We had a group of women called the Mahalia women. Rhymes with Mahalia. We don't know why they're called Mahalia women. At least I don't know why. And the whole function of their religion seemed to be to call out evil wherever they found it. So let's say they believed that there was evil residing in your house. They would go over to your house and they would form a circle around it and they would dance barefooted along around the circumference of your house, calling out the evil that was in there. houses. These women mean business. Burn their hair only on the ends and spit tobacco in the reverend's hedges. They call themselves mothers and wear bare feet in public, daring fathers and brothers to come down on the banquet, and I have seen them dancing along the interstate in mid-January. We call them madhouses, but it is only that we fear. I know their secrets only through having learned them the hardest way. My name is Felicity. I live inside the city. I am telling only as much as you can bear. The Bahilia women are coming from round St. James, carrying the bamba root in their hands. Believe on those hands, and they will see through seasons of drought and flood. Believe on these hands, and you will cross the Grande water. Journey with me and see what I see. First, you hear the leaves, past silence, hitting the ground, moving along the streets with an undercurrent of rhythm, moving to your blood beat and the sounds of your hands reaching up. Just before you see them, there is their confounded jingling, the sound of those root ends against their tambourines, but no one really hears them coming, just the thud of those bare feet against the broken surfaces of the banquet. The low rumbling of song, and then Bahilia, Bahilia, and yet you can never say you heard them. It is like that, they're coming. It is not tonight I will find the path. I am ready, Damballa, but the way is barred. A slender woman in red skirts, tignon and golden hoops through her ears, young and smooth and jerking to the sound of old blood, and thin-skinned men walking on the graves of the old ones. I am ready, O Spirit, but the way is dark. And like rising from a dream, they are gone, and like a vision, they never leave you. Standing in my sideline, you can see them, women so far gone that their walking is dance, madhouses so gray against the other houses and churches that you pretend for now you do not see them and never did. But when you make the final journey and stand at the crossing seeking the barred footing, it was I who first showed you, and remember my name. It was Felicity who told you how to exit one madhouse and enter the other. Living in the tan house. What did Percy Jerome mean marrying me and locking me up in that big block of wood on Calliope Street? I never will know. But he's dead now, and I can't say it really matters. I got my godchild, Marie Steele, to come up here and live. Watch me in the house, you know, just in case. She's about as good as they come, just stays in church is all. He came from off Tennessee Street. That was before I knew him. In the back of my mind, I guess I must have wanted him even then. But there is talk, and so you keep silent about such things until someone else brings them to your notice. So I suppose I wanted him those years he was living around Aunt Gert before I ever knew of him, or at least that's what he said once he'd come to court me. Somehow I never understood that it meant we would marry. Everyone said that was foolishness, and what did I know? A girl of 19, knowing what a grown man of 37 should do. We married then. And 2 years later, he bought this unsightly house and had it painted tan. People coming into the neighborhood looking for me, the old folk would say, Lavinia, Miss Therfield's daughter? She's living in that tan house up the street. Finally, that was how everybody called it, that tan house, and so did I, after time had passed. Things went all right. Percy Jerome treated me good, took care of the notes, but I needed something. I really did just need me something. I tried to tell Percy Jerome, but all he could figure was having a baby. Like having a baby was supposed to do something for me. And when he commenced talking like so, I set him straight and learned all over again to make do without worries. But I still needed something. And when I would go out late of the night and work my garden, it was like I could feel this something pulling at me, just pulling at me from down into the ground. And that was how I discovered my throat and commenced singing. People would say, Lavinia, Miss Therfield's daughter? We never knew she could sing before. They never did, because I never did. Till one night, my throat opened up and I commenced to sing it. It was like hearing a language that never had been. It was like having a whole other woman standing in your middle, singing out your insides. And to tell the truth as I know it, I still cannot find the words. My voice is an okono drum for sacred rituals. This whole city I move in moves to the left, 2 steps at a time, to the songs I declare. Mr. P.C. Ube moved next door to us 5 years later. He was an old gentleman from Point de la Hache. He collected bits of thread from people, was making this tapestry thing, which he called history. Old P.C. Ube didn't bother a soul except to get his cuts of string. He would step out his back door to hear me singing at night. He said nothing at all. I could see him through the hidden lid, and I knew he was listening. Mr. P.C. Ube was listening at me. This song has no words. I am singing this song from a place I have not known. I am singing without words. I need to say those things for which no words are coined. My soul's a rice field, and this voice, ancient hum, first words, first darkness, original soliloquy, for my soul is laid down.
Sometimes I take poems from stories that I overhear or from things that I pick up in the newspaper. If you've ever visited New Orleans and you've been so unfortunate as to have to read the Times-Picayune, which is our local daily paper, you kind of know what I mean. I read a story about a woman who was in her kitchen minding her own business one morning, and some younger relatives were talking in her presence about having her put somewhere. Eileen. In the middle of the kitchen floor, Eileen stood stoop-shouldered, moving only her eyes, slowly, with much effort. I could kill me somebody, was all she said. And afterwards, there were dead people lying about the linoleum, taking turns, not looking dead. For 5 days, she told no one. The 6th day, she went out into the middle of Gonzaga Street and said, "You all come. Help. I have done killed my people." Like Pie Man telling out his pies. "You all help. I've done killed my people, and they've been dead near on a week." Perhaps she never thought they would come, never expected them to help or even believe. And it is such a lonely sound early in the morning, a voice calling in the streets, trying to peddle off dead bodies to the neighbors. But they never quite caught on. And so Eileen went back into the house to wait for the law. And the law came with plastic bags, scooping up Miss Dottie and Miss Martha and little Juliette and Doreen. The law scooped them up into plastic bags and called next of kin to clean out the mess. Eyes and noses, thick portions of flesh. Eileen, they said, in her grief, sat stock still and would be months and days recovering from the shock. A year or more went by. Eileen stopped wearing black, and then the neighbors began to be afraid. Eileen could be heard all hours of the night, not what she said, but her voice, her laughter, empty and stark, a hungry laugh it was. In the morning she'd greet them, meet them at market, ask after their people, touch the children's hair, and after dark, when she was alone in the little shotgun on Gonzaga Street, she would stand before the mirror. "I could kill somebody," she'd say, and laugh like anything, like nothing at all. My third book is a book-length poem in 12 numbered titled cantos. It's called Desperate Circumstance, Dangerous Woman. The first canto is called Memory, and I'm going to read a selection from that. I should tell you that it's about a young woman named Marie, Marie Crying Eagle is her name, who takes a journey following the death of her mother.
She's living with her lover, whose name is Percy, who believes that she has put a fix on him, a spell. I sit in the front parlor, the window open from the floor, the hard rain rushing in, stinging like fire ants against my feet. The little cloth navy pumps Mama had given me, set to one side out of the wet. Do you know what hunger is? I sit with the water moving about my feet, remembering what it feels like to be touched. My mother's hands parting my oiled hair down the center across the front. My mother's hands bearing down on my back, rolling a little from place to place, as if there were some secret place she could touch me to help me cry and just be done with it. Hands of some hoodoo woman cradling my face, bathing me in bamba and sweet basil, feeling with her fine, wet hands along my skull, along my spine. The hands of lovers who thought they knew something of desire, good men, some of them, with no way of knowing how their own hands would betray them. You, Percy, down on your knees on the hardwood floor, arms wrapped about me, groping with your palms and fingers along my hips, my thighs. Please, woman, please, that's what you said each time you bit my brown flesh, sucking up the little traces of blood between clenched teeth. Did I cry? Did I cry? No, it was you kept saying, you got your hands on me, woman. God have mercy, you got your hands on me, but you stayed, didn't you? The day we buried Mama hangs in my mind like a yellow cotton summer dress on the clothesline out back. What I remember, how her sisters, the two who outlived her, argued with me over everything. The plain wood coffin, her body, the clothes I chose to lay her out in, the ribbon of blue silk wrapped loosely about her folded hands which held no meaning for them, the Mexican earrings hanging from her ears, the mass of gray hair I would not let the mortician dye or straighten, the nails shaped and painted, that moony opal color she wore so often, and at the wake, the shameless way I touched her, holding, feeling her hands and face, kissing her eyes and mouth as though she were a lover or alive. That night you lay against me, your face pressed deep against the pit of my arm. I rubbed your smooth neck with one hand. You kissed my breast. I thought of Mama, the yellow cotton dress, blowing, hanging on the clothesline. Miss Regina stands above me, above my naked body, laid out on a pile of burlap, filled with pungent roots, bruised herbs. She steps around me in her stocking feet, sprinkling scented waters about the burlap and my skin. Through the long window panes leading up from the floor, I can see the slates on the rooftops take on the faint light of the late sun going down. Miss Regina bends and puts both hands into the earthen vessel beside my head. She brings out the red cloth and puts it to my body, begins to rub slowly with a back and forth motion, my chest, my breasts, my sides, the soft of my belly, working her way along the stretch of my body, singing in the same sing-song voice she uses for everyday speech. I go back and forth between a hard, shaking chill and the calm of yellow cotton dresses. When Miss Regina leaves me, I am thrashing almost to death. When I wake the next morning to the smell of thick coffee and biscuits heavy with butter, the shades are drawn. I lie in bed beneath blue cotton sheets and comforters. White towels and a wet wash basin await me, left in plain view the way a woman Miss Regina's age would remember to place them. I wash. I peer into the looking glass, tilted back against the window ledge. When I let up the shade to see, there is Miss Regina in the backyard, hanging out the wash. I'm going to close with my Nina Simone poem. Is there anyone here who remembers Nina Simone, who knows the music of Nina Simone? Thank you so much, I'm so glad. It's terrible reading to people who don't know Nina Simone. When I was I'll tell you a couple of stories as quickly as I can. When I was a girl, I had a best friend, and her name was Marceline Marie Lyons. And Marceline Marie Lyons had the only things in life that I've ever envied anyone. She had two sisters, both of them older. I only had a brother. He was older, but he wasn't much good for anything. I mean, not to me. He was a perfectly fine boy, as boys went, but he was no good to me as a sister, obviously. So she had these two sisters. One was a social worker. She was married, had 2.3 children. She drove a four-door car and, wore taupe-colored stockings and little flat-heeled shoes, like the ones I'm wearing now. And I didn't want her. I wasn't concerned about her at all. She was quite disgusting. The one I wanted was the one whose name was Alethea. Alethea wore an afro and dashikis, and she wore sandals all the time, and her toenails were always painted. She wore large African jewelry, and she knew all of the latest dances, and she knew every popular song. She knew everything about everything, and she was the hippest, coolest, livest thing either of us had ever seen in our lives. She taught us how to dance, how to sing, how to flirt with boys and stuff, even before we needed to. One day she walked into her bedroom, and we were in there messing with all of her things. And she turned up the volume on the television, and we watched her and her college friends on television engaged in and being arrested for what we now politely refer to as the years of student unrest at Southern University in New Orleans and Baton Rouge. That's one story. She also told us that if we ever wanted to grow up to amount to anything as women, we had to learn to listen to Nina Simone and Roberta Flack. When I was a girl in my teens, I went to France for a little bit over a year. I was one of 6 or 7 black women of any description, African, African-American, Caribbean. I was a group of only 6 or 7 women in the entire university. There were hundreds and hundreds of African, Caribbean, and Afro-Latin men. We never lacked for dates, never. None of us ever had a boyfriend, because how do you date like 500 guys? But we never lacked for dates. We were never alone. We were never lonely. We were not permitted to be lonely. We had these parties that lasted all weekend. They were called booms. And they lasted all weekend, which meant you couldn't go home for the weekend. So when I went to my first boom, I didn't know that I couldn't go home. And I asked the guy, I said, well, I need a lift home because I'm tired now. I got to get up. He said, oh, no, you can't go. You have to stay. Who are we going to dance with? There are only so many of you. We've got to dance with somebody. You can't go. So I said, well, what if I go home, rest, and come back after? He said, you want to rest? Go upstairs and rest. There are beds up there, showers, you can change your clothes. I said, what kind of man has clothes upstairs they're going to get changed into when they come to his house and they're imprisoned for the weekend because they're at a party? But I went upstairs and there were people sleeping upstairs waiting to wake up to start booming all over again. So the men did all the cooking and all we had to do was show up and dance and be beautiful. And we would stay, I would stay. I always prided myself on being able to hang with the fellas. And so I would stay late after everybody had gone, and we would listen to music a little bit different than what we've been dancing to all night long. We danced to things like Push, Push in the Bush. We danced to things like In Zaire, lives a man, lives a man. In Zaire, lives a man, lives a man. That's what we danced to. But in the wee hours, we would listen to a little jazz. And so this brother says to me one day, let me interrupt this story a little bit because it's the best one. There's another little story where I'm dancing. This brother says to me, I said, I'm tired. I need to go home. I need to go to sleep. And he says, one day you'll be old. You'll sleep fine. Okay, so we're dancing. We get to the late part of the evening. This guy turns and he says, get up and put on some Nina Simone. Those are the stories for the morning. Nina Simone has performed at the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival twice. The first time she showed her fatal ASS, as my grandmother would say. And this poem will tell you why. The Evening News, a letter to Nina Simone. A wail, a whoop, a line brought back from nowhere, deep violet of memory, stored up against hard times coming. We were righteous then, experienced in things we had not seen, but always knew would pass this way. We had righteousness on our side. They say you stood before a small audience in New Orleans last year and abused them for their smallness. Not just their numbers, but their looks, their soulless way of sitting and waiting to be entertained. They told me how you stood there and cursed them good, told me how they took it, for the sake of all they used to be so long ago they never could forget. Could only say like the old folk, when cornered perhaps, said, I disremember. I asked them what the war. I remember the years I struggled with the very private fear that I would remain a child forever and miss all that was major in our one moment of glory. Even a child knows there is one such moment, one. Even I had sense enough to see you and not weep. Even a child then understood the words sister, brother, people, power. And anyone could see we were all the evening news. And hear you sing. At least that was what they called it. It was my best girlfriend's sister who came upon us closed up in her bedroom, laughing over her cosmetics, her jewelry, her sex, her TV, and instead of sending us out, leaned there in the doorway and said, "You two know so much, want to be so grown and everything, need to quit all that giggling and learn to listen to Nina." That was late on. Aletha came into her own bedroom and sat between us on the bed. She turned up the volume but did not change the station. We watched her and her college friends in dashikis and afros on the evening news. That year, Marceline and I listened close to the lyrics and the ways, the easy breaths and breathless lines, the underground silences of you and Roberta. We argued and sassed, slapped hands on our hips at the slightest provocation, and learned when and when not to apologize for it. Two brown girls acting out, mothers looking out over our heads that way they had back then, whenever we went so far we did not need to be told. We gave our telephone numbers to those boys with the hippest walks, the better grade of afro, the deep changing voices, and we never took their calls. We danced the sophisticated sissay, the thang, the shake, the go on, the soul strut. We counted our girlfriends, soul sister number 1, soul sister number 2. Marceline learned to cornrow, and I braided my older brother's bush each night. We were too much, and we knew it. We thought we understood it all, deep violet, but that was years ago, and you were in your glory then. Then, while I was still younger than I knew or admitted, and studying in south of France, I danced 4 nights out of 5 and all weekend, my arms on the hips or shoulders of some wiry brother from Cameroon or Ivory Coast, or Senegal, Algeria, Panama, Martinique, one of only 6 or 7 young black women at university, among the dozens and dozens of dark men who circled us, weaving their weightless cloth, their heavy garb, escorted when I would have been alone, fed when I had no hunger, driven when I lacked a destination, protected from the mere possibility of danger, and danger to them we knew meant Frenchmen, white men. Courted and corseted and danced into sleeplessness, you will be old one day, sister, then you will sleep fine. But their hearts, the dark, wiry hearts of the brothers, were in the right places. The foolish ones said, "You are like women of my country," and feigned weaknesses no one would believe they ever even remotely had known. Often enough had the good sense enough to laugh at themselves and grin at the rest of us, and the others did something like waiting, danced, and at the end of an evening said, "I have this sister, this Nina. Play some for my sister here, man. Man, get up and put on that Nina Simone." And we sat in the silence in the dark as one found the shiny vinyl and put the needle to the darker groove. We sat choked with Roman cigarettes, too much dancing, too much good food. We sat listening and did not touch. We looked at one another's hands and read recognition there. One day we would be old. We would sleep and no longer know one another. We sat into the night until we grew hungry again and sick from the stale air. We listened. We wailed. We did not touch or bow down our heads. And that is the meaning of the word expatriate. If you live right, if you live right, if you live right, but what has living done for you? I heard your voice over the radio late one night in Cambridge, telling how you never meant to sing. Whoever interviewed you hardly said a word. He asked his questions, and you took your time. You breathed long breaths between phrases, your speaking voice lighter and less lived in than I remembered. You sang a line or two and talked about your life. I asked my question directly into the speaker. What the hell did living do for you, girl? I sat on the floor and drank my coffee. I paced the carpet between your pauses. I pulled my nightdress up in both hands and danced, but I got no satisfaction that night. And for what it matters, heaven did not come to me either. Don't talk to me about soul. Don't tell me about no damn soul. Years and years and years of all night long and where are you and making time and doing right. Expatriate years, years, woman, years, where were you? And then you sang, Fodder on my wings, with not a bit of holy in your voice, and what could I do? A young woman, I put myself to bed. It was the following year that you cursed them down in New Orleans, dragged for them like muddy water. I listened to the story on the telephone or looked into the faces I came on in the streets. What I asked them, did she wear? And do you think they could tell me? All I asked the people was, what did the woman have on? And what about it? If your country's full of lies, if your man leaves you, if your lover dies, if you lose your ground and there is no higher ground, if your people leave you, if you got no people, if your pride is hurting, if you got no pride, no soul, if you're living in danger, if you're living in Mississippi, Baltimore, Detroit, if you walk right, talk right, pray right, if you don't bow down, if you're hungry, if you're old, if you just don't know, please, please, outside of you there is no place to go. These are the expatriate years. These, what is left. The people dragged their sorry asses out to see you and you cursed them. You looked out into their faces, those you could see, and accused them. You called them down for all those years. You sang the songs you sang when you were younger, and you made them pay. And then, violet and a longer time, no one will speak of. Dear Nina, I want to say to you how we did not mean it. How we did not mean to give you up, to let you go off alone that way. I want to say how we were a younger people, all of us, but none of it is true. We used you, and we tossed what we could not use to the whites, and they were glad to get it. We tossed you out into such danger and closed our eyes and ears to what was to become of you in those years deep, deep violent. And worst of all, we did not even say your name. We ate you like good hot bread, fresh from the table of an older woman. And then we tossed the rest out for scavengers. Does it matter? Does it matter when and how we did it to you? Does it matter we got no righteousness from it, that we felt no shame? Does it matter we took all good things in excess then and again, not only you, but all things? Does it matter we sometimes return to you now, in the back rooms of childhood friends, forgiven lovers? Does it matter this is no gift or tribute or rite or holy thing, but just a kind of telling, a chronicle to play back against those images that never quite made it to the evening news? How cursed, how sorry a mess of people can we be now, when outside of you, there is no place